Diaz.
Nate Diaz versus Showtime Anthony Pettis.
This is an exciting fight.
It is.
My only knock on this is Anthony Pettis is he didn't look convincing in his last fight. Because we both agreed he was losing that fight up until that Superman punch.
Right.
And so he's been on record saying that he's a better striker than Nate Diaz, a better overall fighter than Nate Diaz.
Okay.
He did not show that to me on the last fight.
So here's the thing. It's so incredibly hard to look good against Wonderboy.
Mm-hmm.
It's very difficult to look good against Wonderboy, especially when you're in the same weight class. But I mean, let's just be real here. I mean, you look at the two guys. Wonderboy is clearly a bigger guy, and he's got that awkward stance and all this stuff. I think all things considered, yes, I agree with you. I think Wonderboy was winning that fight, but I don't think Anthony looked terrible. I thought he looked, about as best you can in that situation. And then obviously he won the fight, right? And now the thing for Nate Diaz, though, is we haven't seen Nate Diaz fight in a
3
while.
years, yeah.
Yeah. But we know he's been training consistently. He just hasn't fought. But still, I mean, we haven't seen him in quite some time, so we don't know what he looks like. That being said, the last 2 times that we saw him fight, he was in 2 great fights.
2 great fights. He can
McGregor.
take a hit.
Right.
He's not easy to go down.
Right.
It'll be interesting to see how Nate Diaz comes back after a 3-year layoff.
Long story short, I hope and I think we're in for a brawl.
I hope so too. I hope Nate Diaz flips off Pettis because those two have history.
They have history, yeah.
From everything I've been reading or seeing from UFC on YouTube, these two have history. So
this whole thing stems from, we all know Nate Diaz, has worked hard at the sport. He's a veteran. He's been around for a long time. And he seems to take exception to people that just come in and they're flashy and they get all this star-studded treatment, right? Case in point, Conor McGregor.
Yeah.
It's the whole issue with him and Conor McGregor. You're taking everything I worked for, motherfucker.
Yeah.
Right? So that's his whole beef with Anthony Pettis, was that he felt like he was doing things the right way in the UFC. He won the Ultimate Fighter. He's beating guys, submitting guys, finishing guys. And then here comes Showtime Anthony Pettis doing spinning shit, kicks off the wall. Then he becomes the champion, and then becomes the Wheaties box guy. Which is one of the best things, in my opinion, about the build-up to this fight, is that Nate Diaz is obsessed with fighting the Wheaties box guy.
That's pretty funny. That's pretty funny.
And Anthony Pettis took exception to the fact that Nate Diaz was just being kind of a punk back then and just talking all this shit. And it's been a couple of years, but from recent interviews, it seems like Nate Diaz doesn't really have an issue with Anthony Pettis.
He's just one of those guys that he wants to fight.
Yeah, he's like, I want to fight that guy. That guy's pretty cool, right? He's cooler than all these other guys.
Yeah.
But Anthony Pettis doesn't seem to have forgotten the shit that Nate Diaz was saying.
For sure.
So.
Yeah. No, I think this may be the people's fight. What do you think?
The people's main event?
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
You know how people say like that's the people's main event, right?
That's a really... I don't want to jump too early and say it's overused, but I'm hearing that a lot.
Right, but you know what it means though.
Yeah, 100%.
Like to MMA, the MMA world, like that's the fucking fight.
Yeah, like Tony Ferguson versus Cowboy.
That was a people's fight. Yeah, exactly. This to me is the people's main event. No disrespect to Cormier and Stipe, but that one right there, because of who he's fighting, Pettis and Nate Diaz.
Right.
And we know how Nate Diaz is.
Yeah.
Right. He just fucking loves to fight. So that to me is a people's fight. I'm so excited to see how this turns out.
I can't believe I'm actually going to say this, but I kind of hope this fight goes to the judges. I'll explain.
You're crazy.
Yeah, I'll explain. I literally just want to see these two dudes fight for as long as possible.
For sure. I mean, who knows? I'm gonna lean. So my pick on this one, I'm gonna pick Nate Diaz.
Okay.
That's who I'm rooting for, and ultimately, as I analyze this fight, that's who I think is gonna take this fight.
I'm gonna pick Anthony Pettis on this one.
Anthony Pettis looked very good against Tony Ferguson, but we're in a world where what have you done for me lately? And
how about knockout Wonderboy Thompson, one of the best in the world? How about that?
He did, but knockouts happen instantly. Sometimes you get lucky. I don't know. I mean, I don't see him knocking out Nate Diaz.
Okay.
I really don't. When's the last time Nate Diaz has been knocked out?
It's been a while. I think
he's very durable. Like, this guy can take a punch.
When was the last time he got knocked out?
He took a lot of punches from Conor.
Was his last knockout versus Josh Thompson?
So how long ago was that?
That would have been a while ago now.
Right. So I feel like punches like that are not gonna easily take down Nate Diaz.
No, and
And we know Nate Diaz has cardio for days.
So Nate Diaz's last knockout was Josh Thompson and back in 2013.
So that was 6 years ago, the last time he got KO'd.
Right, 6 years ago. And I remember watching that fight, and it wasn't like he got knocked out with like the first big thing that hit him. Josh Thompson had hit him several, if I'm not mistaken, he had been hit with a head kick several times before he got knocked out. So the dude's got a chin, obviously.
Right. I think for me, the things that stand out for Nate Diaz compared to Pettis is his ground game.
Okay.
Is one thing.
Okay.
I think that his striking's not, I wouldn't say Nate Diaz's striking is elite.
Okay.
Like some of the best in the world, but I feel like it's good enough.
Okay.
And then his cardio.
Okay.
The guy has insane cardio.
Yes.
I see him on Instagram doing like marathons, tri-marathons, stuff like that. He has cardio.
Yeah.
So there won't be an issue of him getting tired.
Okay. So
and the way he goes against Conor, you can tell like he was waiting for Conor to get tired out.
Yeah.
I wonder if he does the same thing with Pettis.
Well, that's his style. He just brings volume until you get tired. Let's talk about a couple things, though. You said Anthony Pettis. You mentioned something about Anthony Pettis' ground game, right?
No. I'm talking about Nate Diaz's ground game. I feel like because he's a black belt.
Right.
And, I think he came from the Gracie.
He did, yeah.
I think that says something for Nate Diaz. He's very dangerous when it goes to the ground.
This is a really great mixed martial arts fight. Like, this is such a great MMA fight because I'm truly excited to see this fight wherever it goes, to be honest with you. Because we all know Nate Diaz is a whiz on the ground, right? His jiu-jitsu is incredibly strong. But Anthony Pettis is also a whiz on the ground.
Oh, for sure.
That's really fun to watch. For sure. And so Anthony Pettis, we know that his striking portfolio is massive. That dude can throw all kinds of stuff, right? And Nate Diaz doesn't really throw all that much stuff. He's more of like, let's just be real. He's a boxer with some kicks. Yeah. Right?
Nate Diaz, I'm calling it. He's going to throw a Stockton slap on that fight. Watch out for a slap.
But here's the thing.
For Stockton, baby.
It's kind of crazy that you mentioned that. I'm not sure if you're aware of this or not, but there's a hotly debated topic right now on MMA Twitter, as it's only a couple hours old, right? Where someone asked, here, actually, I want to find this person so we can give him a shout out. Somebody recently asked if they think that Nate Diaz is an elite level fighter, right? Okay. And it's kind of opened up a can of worms because
when you say elite, are you talking about like one of the best in his division or one of the best fighters pound for pound?
And this is why it opened up a can of worms. Because like, what is it? Like, what do you mean elite? Mm-hmm. Like, are you talking? Because like, are you going to say that anybody? On one hand, you could say that anybody that's in the UFC is an elite level fighter because they've made it into the UFC, right? But I'm pretty sure what people mean is like, when they meet an elite level fighter, you're talking about like the top 5% of fighters. Okay. Right? You could even say like the top 5% of fighters in each division or whatever. But to me, I think that Nate Diaz is an elite level competitor. Let's put it that way. He's got amazing cardio. The dude comes to fight. He doesn't quit. Right? But does he have like the same striking arsenal, for example, that like Anthony Pettis has? No, he doesn't, right? His striking is a little more basic, but that doesn't mean that the stuff that he does isn't at an elite level, right? Like, if the guy's going to throw ones and twos, basically, right, which Nate doesn't. Obviously, his boxing is great. But if that's his main strong suit, then he's got to be able to do it at a wicked good level. Right. And Nate Diaz does do that, right? You take a look at a guy like, let's not get too ahead of ourselves here, but like Stipe, for example. Stipe is one of the most decorated heavyweights of all time, right? You don't see Stipe throwing like hook kicks. You don't see him throwing wheel kicks. You don't see him throwing crazy stuff like that, right? He's using his hands. Yeah. He's not throwing crazy elbows like Tony Ferguson. He's throwing punches, right? Yeah. He's a boxer. So it'll be kind of interesting to see this fight play out on the feet. You know? How much crazy stuff how much spinning shit does Anthony Pettis employ? Yeah. And how well can Nate Diaz do what he normally does to people? Yeah. Against Anthony Pettis.
Yeah. Very excited. And if, let's say Nate Diaz wins, it'd be interesting to see if he continues to keep fighting or if he stays out again.
Yeah. And Anthony Pettis going forward too, because I'm not sure exactly what the plan was when he fought Wonderboy. I don't know if that was the plan to continue at 170. But then he got this contract offer for Nate Diaz. He signed it. So If Anthony Pettis wins this fight, obviously he's probably staying at welterweight.
I think he is staying at welterweight because he mentioned that he wanted to go to 170 because he didn't want to do the weight cut anymore.
Right.
And the first person he called out was Wonder Boy.
Right.
So, and then the Nate Diaz fight came up to him. So,
right.
I think he sticks at 170. And then if Nate Diaz winds up winning this fight, this can potentially lead to a Conor Nate Diaz 3. It's all right.
Oh, it was the Combat Hub at Combat Hub Real says, "Do you consider Nate Diaz an elite level fighter?" And yeah, if you want to hop on there and read that thread, that's a fun conversation.
I'll tell you after this fight. I'll tell you whether Nate Diaz is a high level fighter or not.
That's right. Oh, an elite level fighter.
Elite.
That's right.
This fight will tell me whether he is or not. So we'll find out.